expected something
All right.
better than before.
Hey, welcome. We got joining us from a sweaty boxing gym in Pittsburgh is Brett Cain, and joining us from the parking lot of a strip club in Philadelphia is Dr. Bennett. So welcome, guys.
It's so good to be here.
Yeah, this is an honor. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I think this will be fun. I think you guys are the right people to talk about this movie that we got today. But first, just wanted to give you each an opportunity. We'll start with you, Brett, to just talk about what you've been up to lately and anything you want to promote.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here. I'm just a helper. You guys are the prolific creators and movers and shakers, but yeah, I'm a regular guy. I work for the local school district. I do groundskeeping. I've written some books. I like to draw. Got a wife and daughter. Yeah, just pretty normal stuff, but I'm super honored to be here because this is a phenomenal podcast. I've been sharing it with everybody. And of course, Dr. Bennett is the coolest guy on the planet. And this is one of my favorite movies. So I'm so glad we've got to talk about this because I see myself so much in this movie because I do have a mixed martial arts background and, obviously the family side of it and the military side of it. It's fantastic.
Brett, I'm not going to let you off the hook that easy. Because you said I think you're like a regular guy, but you're not. You're very much a Renaissance man. You mentioned your books, but you've got a couple of published books. You don't just write books; you've got them published, and you've got a podcast of your own.
And anybody that I think of to go on like the Exit podcast, Brett knows that guy. Brett knows everybody somehow.
Yeah, I mean, and it sound every couple of days you mentioned some notable figure in your world who you're back channeling with, who you're talking to. So it's any day now before you're on Jocko's podcast or something like that.
I mean, Brett is himself Rogan-esque. He's a sleeper. You don't necessarily see him coming.
Yeah, Brett, where can people find the podcast you're doing? Because you're putting out an episode or two a week.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Again, just those are amazing compliments. Yeah, so I've got the Ironside podcast that I host with my friend Tom Dinkelman, and you can follow me on Twitter at Brett W. Cain. And yeah, I've got, like you said, I've got some books published, and they kind of tie into this movie too, because that sort of disenfranchisement, mixed martial arts, fighting, family stuff. And I think the reason that, I can hobnob with everybody is because I love everybody and I just consider myself a friend of everybody. And, a lot of these, big names, I've listened to a lot of their podcasts. I've read their books and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally know this guy. Or, even someone who's not in the public eye, I like to communicate with them because they're just as important, if not more so, than these public figures. So that's what I want on my tombstone, a friend to all.
Well, we're glad to have you. I'll put links to your books and to your podcast and anything else you're working on underneath on the show notes on the various places that I publish this. So, Dr. Bennett, what are you up to, and what should people be checking out?
Well, so as some of you are going to know, I run Exit Group, which is a freedom incubator. It's a space for people to learn about entrepreneurship and homesteading and all kinds of practical skills to make yourself less susceptible to corporate coercion, to kind of get out from under the HR geriatric longhouse and into a better way of living. And we've got 140 guys in the tent. Just got done with a great entrepreneurship call where we explored, probably 20 or more different business ideas that the guys are working on. That's a lot of fun. You can check out exitgroup.us to learn more about that. We also have the Exit podcast, which goes into various hustles that people do and how it works for them and how you can replicate, some elements of their success.
Awesome. Yeah. And, I'm a member of that exit group. It's very valuable. It's a good community. So I'll put a link to that. Anyone who's interested in that, definitely check it out. All right. So, we'll get into the movie in a minute. But was curious about anything else you guys just on your mind these days. It could be. I kind of center things here about pop culture, whether it's film or television or even music or something. Anything you guys are watching that's like good or interesting right now that people should be aware of.
Go ahead, Dr. Bennett. I know you're very up to date on just everything. You know everything. I mean, you're a walking encyclopedia.
Well, and even if it's like you're watching something from the '90s or whatever.
Well, I appreciate that, Brett. So honestly, what's been on my mind lately has been your podcast about Hell or High Water. Granted, what a fascinating movie, and it explores so many of the things that I care about. And that's been what I've been just chewing on. I'm actually working on a write-up that started as basically I want to talk about this movie, and sort of opened up into a much, much, much bigger discussion, and it keeps getting bigger, and I'm intimidated to write it. But that one really opened me up. So if you haven't seen it, Hell or High Water, an incredible movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because these podcasts don't do big numbers anyway, but that one especially didn't do numbers, and I think it's just because a lot of people hadn't seen the movie, and so that they're not going to go listen to a podcast about it if they hadn't seen it. And yeah, so I encourage everyone, go check it out. I think it's on Netflix, so even if you're
It's on
have some
Amazon
sort of,
too, I think.
yeah, even if you have some sort of resolution against Netflix, everyone can borrow a password and go watch it. It's a pretty worthwhile movie.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite episodes, and that's that you've done so far, and a fantastic movie. I've seen that movie, half a dozen times, and I shared your episode on Hell or High Water with my father, who loves that film, and he really liked it. It's awesome, and these are important conversations because people see so many movies and then they forget about stuff, or they don't get the chance to talk about it. So this is actually really valuable. And you said it's not doing big numbers, and I would add yet, because you're well on your way to expanding.
Your guest on that podcast, Degree Studies, is a scintillating conversationalist. Just in general, you could talk to him about anything. So
yeah,
great.
And part of the idea kind of behind this project is I've always been a big consumer of like pop culture, for better or for worse. And not only do I go and watch a bunch of movies, I then go seek out like conversations about those movies. And like 9 times out of 10, the conversations are led by people who not only do they not like share my values, they wouldn't even know my value. Like they don't even know where to begin. And so part of the kind of the central idea of this project is to have a place where people who think like me, and people can determine what label that however they want, but people who think a little bit more like me have an opportunity to hear to hear culture through the filters that they might apply themselves. So that's kind of the main idea of what I'm trying to do.
You mentioned, I think it was with Degree Studies, the phenomenon of being viewed as a hater, and wanting to tell the people like, no, I actually think I enjoyed this more than you did. I just have a lot of thoughts about it. That was me and my mom. That was how me and my mom would bond, is we'd go see a movie on a very regular basis. And as we're walking out of the theater, I am wanting to talk to her about it. And she's like, man, why did you hate this movie? Like, it's just a movie. So that rang very true for me.
Yeah, it's annoying to be told you're overanalyzing or something when you just want to like do any degree of analysis, and people say, you're overanalyzing it. Just enjoy it. And it's like, yeah, I did enjoy it.
This is how I'm
Well,
enjoying it. Maybe you're underthinking
yeah, yeah. Hey, Brett, correct me if I'm wrong, but had you been watching the new Jack Reacher adaptation?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was actually going to mention that. It's on Amazon. The first episode, especially, surprisingly clean. Yeah, obviously there's going to be some violence, a little bit of adult content. So I'm going to plug VidAngel if you want to get that service, so you can watch things and edit them, down to the second, but it's easy to fast forward those as well. But yes, fantastic series. I was beyond impressed. My parents got me into the Jack Reacher books when I came back from serving as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I just fell in love with the books. Like, absolutely formative for me, and how I've conducted myself and how I train and how I fight, and really inspired my own books that have since been published. But yes, the series, very true to the book. A lot of people hate on the Tom Cruise films, but I actually like those. When the first one came out, I would go and see it every night for a week in the theater. And sometimes I'd be the only person in the theater just because I liked it. And yeah, Tom Cruise doesn't look like the character, but he definitely broke the ice. And I think he laid the groundwork for them to make this series. But Alan Ritchson just nails the performance of Jack Reacher. And it's very true to the first novel, Killing Floor, in the series. And I've read all the books dozens of times, and it's a great series. It's a lot of fun, a lot of great action, great, supporting characters, well cast too, well directed, well written. It's a lot of fun. Highly recommend the Jack Reacher series.
Yeah, I hadn't checked it out yet, but I've been interested, partly because I saw you had posted about it. I never read the books or anything, but I do plan to watch at least start the series and see how it goes.
Yeah, one episode and you'll be hooked. It's that good.
All right, awesome. With that, let's start talking about 2011's Warrior.
Whenever you say it, I can do this.
You got him! This is impossible! The two men fighting for the championship tonight are brothers! The war!
Are we here to win this fight? Because if we're not, I will throw in the towel.
What I was going to hit on first here is I'd just like to hear you guys' history with the movie. Like, when did you, Brett, it sounds like you've seen it a dozen times. When did you first see it? I mean, it hasn't, it's, I guess, 11 years old at this point. But yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it came out the year I came home from having been a missionary. And when I was in college, I went to a small school, Southern Virginia University, and we had a summer class, and my favorite professor who taught classics of Western literature, he offered this class called How to Read a Film. And we would just go to his house. There's only like a dozen students over the summer semester, and we would just watch movies in his basement on a little projector. And this was one of the films that we watched. His son, good friend of mine, and I had started when I first got to school a mixed martial arts club. I grew up boxing and fighting and fell in love with this movie. And I just watched it again tonight in preparation for this. And every time I watch it, it makes me tear up because it's more than just an MMA movie. It's got a lot of heart, and we'll obviously get into that. But I really liked it. Great actors, very well cast. And it was definitely one of my favorite films, especially sports films.
Yeah, and Dr. Bennett, I think I know when you saw it. It was like last week when we
Oh, yeah.
when
No,
people.
you asked me to do a podcast on this movie, and I went and watched it.
Yeah, I was gonna say you got bullied into it. So
That's right. No, but it was really good. It's interesting. It feels, as far as I know, it's not like a Christian film, but it kind of has some of that DNA in it, and I can't express exactly where that's coming from, but it's like, I don't know. It has this like morality play element, and it has this this earnestness to it that makes it feel like a Christian movie, but it I feel like it transcends that a lot of the weaknesses of that genre, and it's kind of, what's strong about it is what's left.
did you? Yeah, I think there's something to that, and I'm wondering. Was this movie even on your radar? Did you really know? Because it kind of fell flat commercially.
Literally hadn't heard of it, and I was like, I was like, oh, that's Tom Hardy. Like, what's he doing in this movie? And like, it basically this sort of unfolded to me. Like, I literally I thought it was like a small budget film, and then I was like, oh, there's all these people in it. This is a real like Hollywood movie.
Yeah, and this was I think after Inception too, so he wasn't small time.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it went under the radar. And so I think for me, I probably saw it around the time it came out, not in the theater. Probably as a rental. I think I watched it with my younger brother, and it's a total brother movie.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate. I mean, if you don't have a brother, get a friend and watch it. And if you don't have a friend, go watch it with your dad. But yeah, I mean, I just remember me and my brother watching it and just thinking it was really cool, and we loved. And I don't care about spoilers or anything. I if anyone's gonna listen to us, I'm sure they will have watched the movie already. But we got such a kick out of the end where Tom Hardy's injured and the brother is in this situation where he has to just keep pummeling him, for Tom Hardy's own good. But yeah, so that was my history with it. But like I say, it went under the radar. It's gotten like kind of a following since, but if you guys have anyone who's listened to this show before, they know I do this Rotten Tomatoes game thing. So I hope you guys haven't looked up the Rotten Tomatoes score for this, because I'm gonna give you each a shot at guessing both the critic score and the audience score. And Bennett, you can go first, and you can give your rationale for why you think the score would be what it is.
So again, my intuition about this having that Christian film DNA, critics tend to hate that. They're going to say, oh, it's sappy, it's sentimental, it's oversimplified, the characters are thin. But at the same time, it's so well done. I'm going to say probably 60 or 70 for the critic, and like 85, 90 for the audience.
All right. All right, Brett, what are you thinking?
Yeah, that's pretty good. I kind of right along the same lines. I'm going to say 87 for audience and 78 for critics, probably for the same reason. I think a lot of people might have gone into this expecting, a Rocky or, a Karate Kid or one of those fighting movies. But yeah, it's well beyond that. And it's a family drama that happens to be during a mixed martial arts tournament. So I think that some of the people might not have gotten what they expected, but I think it was well received. So I'd say 87 audience and 78 critics.
Okay. So I think, I'm not gonna write down the numbers. I think Brett wins. I think he might win on both. Well, anyway, the critic score was 84, but Bennett's sort of rationale was right on. Like the reviews that are bad, I just scanned them. The negative reviews are basically saying it's sappy or it's it's cliched or contrived or whatever. And then the audience score was 92. Because I personally don't know. Well, I'll say this with one major caveat. I don't really know anyone who's seen it and didn't like it, except for one person, one male in my life, not related, but I watched it with them. I sort of made them sit down and watch it, and they were like unimpressed. They're just sort of like, huh? Like, and this is someone who likes feel good movies. I would say this is kind of a feel good movie, but and it honestly, it kind of like changed my estimation of that person a bit. Like I can't see them quite the same way that they didn't respond to this movie. They just sort of thought it was kind of dumb.
You should have beat him up.
Yeah, I should have challenged them to a cage match. Roger Ebert, peace be upon him, he said he gave us 3 out of 4. I don't know that he traditionally liked like sport movies or anything, but he says it's a rare fight movie where we don't want to see either guy lose. And then, like I was saying, it underperformed. I mean, I think it had a budget of 25. It didn't make that back at the box office. I'm sure. I don't know exactly how Hollywood money works. I'm sure it's made money now, but it only made 23. And just another piece of background: it's the same guy who directed the Miracle, that Miracle on Ice movie. If you guys have seen that.
Wow, it didn't even make it back international. It was worldwide 23. Wow. Yeah,
it just completely fell flat. I don't know why. It seems to have what audience would want. It's a pretty straightforward story. It's got cool guys beating each other up, and but I don't know. Sometimes the marketing for a movie just doesn't connect.
And it opened behind Contagion and The Help.
Ah.
I'm like, what the hell? What happened there?
Yeah, and it was in September. I don't really know what the implications of that are. That's kind of like the fall is a movie-going season, I thought.
Yeah.
What I think, because I didn't see this in theaters, and like you said, I'm not sure how Hollywood money works, but in terms of box office, I saw it when it came out on DVD, back when those were popular, and so maybe that is like that might have been something that a lot of people were just like, I'll wait till it comes out on DVD to watch it.
Yeah, and sometimes the marketing of a movie just really lets the movie down or misrepresents it. I did go back and watch one of the trailers. Maybe some of the trailers were cut better, but the one I watched, it didn't capture. They captured kind of like the feel good elements of it, but they didn't capture the grittiness of it. Because while it does, like, well, Bennett, you're talking about how it does share a lot of traits with like a Christian movie. It also very much doesn't, because it's pretty rough. And the types of family drama are like, they don't really skimp on the family drama. The dad was a very bad guy. The Nick Nolte character. And Tom Hardy's character, Tommy, when he's on screen, he's definitely got a darkness. I've known people who are in a place like that in my life, and they're not pleasant. They're dark. They're not pleasant to be around. Actually, they're scary to be around.
He does such a great job in the ring. And I actually wonder, I would love to know how he trained for this movie, because his musculature, he looks like a creature. He looks like a monster. Part of that's the way he hunches, but like his physique, his traps are just unreal. He's got crazy huge traps that make him look like a hunchback. It's and that totally, and he's got this, like, the way that, like, his lip hangs open, he looks like a goblin. And I mean, it's such like I would love to know if, I mean, I'm sure it was deliberate, because he's very much a pro. But I would love to hear how he did that. Like, was that just the way he's, like, hunched and, like, skulked, or did he actually build for that?
Well, that's interesting that you should say that. And this is kind of a cool bit of movie trivia. So before this, Tom Hardy had no mixed martial arts background. He had never done anything like this before. Whereas Joel Edgerton, he had actually competed and fought before, and had quite a bit of training under his belt. So Tom Hardy, he was training, as if he was getting ready for a fight, 2 hours every day, choreography 2 hours every day, and then weightlifting 2 hours every day. And, so basically, like, they were training for that fight. And one of the things that they wanted to do, and it worked with the character, is they had him finish his opponents so quickly, and it looked good, because if they had been longer drawn out fights, it might have been evident that, he didn't have as much experience with that. And yeah, his physicality is just insane. And he went right from this to Bane in the Dark Knight trilogy. So yeah, it definitely paid off. And he's a very method actor too.
The way you stated that sounds like maybe a more charitable version of kind of how I read it, which was I had heard that he was struggling to look like a fighter, like in the movements, and so I believe they even rewrote some of it just to simplify his fights, to make him this, like, knockout machine, because it was a challenge to make him actually move like a fighter.
Yeah, that's true. And you can kind of see that, and, not to denigrate his performance by any stretch, but even when he's hitting the bag in the gym before his first fight with Mad Dog, it looks like an actor hitting a bag. And he's a very good actor.
As for the physique, and you guys both know a lot more about this than I do. I did, like, high school football, and I, was in the gym a lot, but I never really got into the science and all that. But as for the physique, how realistic is his physique? Is it enhanced, if you know what I mean?
Brett, what do you think?
A lot of people say that, and everyone's like, all actors, you use steroids to some degree. I'd like to give the benefit of the doubt. I don't think so. I mean, I've got, I'll send you guys some shirtless pics sometime, but I've got pretty good traps, not like that, but I don't train like he did. And some people just build certain muscle groups much different and much bigger. My biceps, they can get really big as opposed to, some other muscles. So I think he was good. I think he looked pretty natural. And if you see, like, him training behind the scenes, you can kind of see that natural progression. It's like, oh, this must have been like their first month. Oh yeah, that's much later during the shoot.
Well, he'd done that Bronson movie as well, where he's yoked.
Yeah. So and in both of them, he's not like 8% body fat. He's not. I buy it. He could get there. Some of them, he looks scarier than others. And there's also the element of, like, who cares? Like if he was, like, cheating in a sport, that would be one thing. But, like, if he wants to go on gear to get his physique dialed in so that he can do this movie, like, that's just a personal decision. That's a professional thing that he's got to decide. I mean, like, I don't see it as a negative if that's what he did. put it that way. But it
Yeah,
also
I
doesn't
wouldn't.
look like it had to be that way.
I wouldn't really care either. I don't know enough about it to say, oh, that's irresponsible or something. I mean, I don't know. So I wouldn't care. I actually don't even really care when when athletes do it.
Yeah, and that's funny because it's sad to say, but a lot of my favorite UFC fighters, a lot of them have gotten busted for performance enhancing drugs, and that's always a bummer. And they had some legit actual fighters in this film, which was really cool to see. But yeah, I mean, if anybody was doing something, the guy that got to play Koba, like he was like huge.
Well, that's Kurt Angle, right?
Yeah.
He's an Olympic wrestler, right?
Yep. Yeah, he looked really good, and yeah, you're right. I mean, it really doesn't matter. I've never competed at that high of a level. I've trained with some high level guys, and I really don't think it makes that big a difference. Like Brock Lesnar, he beat Mark Hunt, and then it came out afterward, oh yeah, he was juicing, but he would have beaten Mark Hunt anyway. So I don't think it makes a huge difference.
Apparently, I'm Googling now. He said somebody asked him if he took PEDs for The Dark Knight Rises, and his answer was no. I took Smarties. So, so he may be just sort of like, yeah, like whatever.
An important distinction as well in England, where he's from, Smarties are not the same thing. They're still candy, but there's something different.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
They're more like M&Ms.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job. Joel Edgerton, especially in all of his fights, I really liked his movements. I'm glad they got Frank Grillo in there, who has an extensive mixed martial arts background, and it was kind of fun. It's kind of funny to see because that movie came out a couple years after that kind of feel that they had for the mixed martial arts community, like the tap out shirts, the mohawks. Not to say that doesn't exist anymore, but it's definitely evolved beyond that. The tribal tattoos and yeah.
While you're here, actually, tell me a bit about that, because so this movie's 2011. As I understand it, like UFC is the fastest growing professional league or sport. But what was the state of like UFC in 2011?
Good question. So 2011, and I missed out from 2009 to 2011 since I was in Peru as a missionary. But my dad, he would send me some news clippings and stuff in his letters. So George St. Pierre was still huge. Anderson Silva still huge. They were definitely the big stars at the time. Right when I got home, so 2011, that's when the UFC was looking at bringing some women on board. Shortly after that, Ronda Rousey, she had her heyday. But like the 2008, right around then, 2007 maybe, that's the feel that it evoked, because you did see like the mohawks, the tattoos, the tap out shirts, like that whole thing. And now it's a little bit more dialed in, I think, and there's still plenty that I would say is
like it's more refined now. Is that
yeah to some extent. I mean, you just like, you don't have to look like a thug to be a fighter, and I think this is one of the things that you guys were talking about with critics saying it was sappy. They definitely exaggerated a lot, like the drama, the fights, but that was so poignant because it really made the points come across. And yeah, it's a little bit more dramatic, but it's true. It's like on stage you overact to get it across. So I think they did a good job, and I liked that they kind of made nods to that. Joel Edgerton's character says these aren't real fighters. These are guys who just sit on the couch and watch too much UFC. Or when Tom Hardy's character goes to that gym and he's like, does Fitzy still own this place? And you kind of can picture Mickey from Rocky, some old grizzled old school guy, and they're like, don't know no Fitzy, and then his dad's like, it's not Fitzy's anymore, so I think he was holding on to that old school style, and certainly in the way he trains. And I like that because, if you look at old UFC promos from like the Keith Jardine days, I mean, it's all about like the tap out, and Randy Couture, had his clothing line. And so, yeah, pretty funny stuff. I really appreciated that. And, like the guys they had Nate Marquardt was one of the guys who was in the tournament. He was really big, especially around 2008, 2009. And then Anthony Johnson as well.
I don't know a ton about MMA at all, really, but I seem to remember there was a time when it was first starting out, when there weren't even weight classes, so you could watch this enormous Samoan dude fighting a little Irish kid who just kind of bounced around him, and how far away is this movie from those days?
Yeah, a good question. Pretty far, at this point, they, the UFC was much more established. Obviously, they're competing at middleweight, so they had dialed in the weight classes. So, yeah, let's see. I mean, that was probably, because UFC 1, those early fights, you had guys wearing gis, you had guys wearing shoes, just totally different. So it was several years since that, but still kind of in the formative years. The UFC hadn't adopted some of the lighter weight classes, and wasn't as international. Now we're seeing such an influx of not only Brazilian fighters, but Conor McGregor, definitely a good example of an Irish fighter, and certainly the women's division.
They make a big thing out of all the way from Russia. Koba's coming from Russia. And I feel like that, the sense of oh, we're doing this thing in America and it's just in America. And, we're sort of sending envoys to these other, fighting things that are happening on the other side of the planet. And now it seems much more seamless.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, just real quick with Koba, it's it seems not unintentional. They're trying to evoke, Drago, Ivan Drago.
Ivan Drago, which that was one piece that I felt I don't know. I kind of thought that you could tell they were telegraphing oh, this is going to end with the two brothers fighting. But they kind of needed this intermediate antagonist for a minute to throw you off of that scent. If that makes sense. But I kind of didn't buy that. So, so I was well, okay, whatever. He's Koba, but it's not going to matter. It's going to be them two.
Yeah, that's a criticism I saw a few times. Some people did seem to think that both brothers wouldn't actually get to the finals. I saw some people say oh, they thought, Koba would, severely injure Tommy or something. And then the other brother, whichever brother didn't get injured, would have to avenge his brother sort of thing. But to me, it was always obvious the brothers were going to meet. But I think some percent of the audience did actually think that one brother would have to beat Koba in the end.
Yeah. And maybe, another way you could have taken it is the brothers meet and they have their confrontation, in the final four. And then the one who gets sort of disabled and knocked out of the action is in a sort of supporting role for the other guy as he goes and fights Koba. But yeah, it seemed like it was always going to be them two in the end. Any other path would have been a mistake, because I think that end is so, and to me, it's so perfect that it makes up for
the biggest flaw of the movie, which is just the tournament in itself. The tournament kind of makes no sense, and I want Brett to weigh in on this, but here's what I'm seeing with this tournament. Like, this guy, I think he's putting $5 million on the line, and it's a kind of this big deal, and it's getting a lot of hype, and at least 30,000 people or 20,000. It looks like a small arena or something. All these people want to be there. ESPN keeps talking about it, but somehow these like two unheard of guys sneak in, and it's like a field of like 16 or something, and or even smaller, and quite a few of the competitors are no names, and then there's weight classes don't seem to matter. Like Tommy seems 30 to 40 pounds bigger than Brendan, and Koba seems bigger than both of them. To me, the kind of the, not that this technical stuff really even matters, because the movie is not, the fighting is just the setting for the family drama, but the point being that ending erases any of those like sort of technical concerns.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, I mean, obviously Anthony Johnson, who was one of the actual fighters that they brought in, I mean, he competes at light heavyweight, so definitely bigger than middleweight. Yeah, and it didn't really line up. And probably because right around this time, there was a big middleweight tournament in boxing, and same thing, 16, but it was over the course of a couple months, because you really, I mean, not to say, I mean, people can do amazing things, but generally, unless you're Donald Cerrone, you don't fight that frequently, especially not, one fight one night and then another the very next day, because each fight does take a lot out of you, and you do run the risk of, even if you win, you could have broken your hand, or, so yeah, the tournament, I think it's again, it's a movie and it's fun. And I think they want to have a lot of action, and certainly showcase the different fight styles, of each brother.
Yeah. Regarding the frequency, the tournament in the movie is consecutive days, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's going to be hamburger by the end of that.
Yeah. In a normal, like a top flight guy, like, Khabib, how often is he actually fighting?
Yeah. He's fighting maybe 2 times a year. Like that's, there are guys who fight, 3 or 4 times a year. I mean, Donald Cerrone, I mentioned him, he was fighting too much, and it was not good for his health. I mean, he would fight, and then he would get another fight like 6 weeks later. And that was a really quick turnaround. Yeah.
And it's like, the NFL, you play once a week with you have a 1 or 2 bye weeks, I think. But yeah, I mean, these sort of like punishing sports, you can't do them 3 days in a row, fighting at like people at your skill level for 3 days or something.
I can sort of imagine the consultation that they had with MMA people, and I guarantee there were people who were like, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense. And they were all like, we don't care. That's not what it's about. And okay. So the only reason that interferes with the family drama for me is, well, so much of the energetic core of the movie for me is the power that you derive from the shadow. And Tommy, that's Tom Hardy's character, right? Tommy, and then Brendan's the teacher.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Tommy soaked up all of this dark booze hound energy from his dad. and he's Darth Vader. He's fully like bestial, like savage, and hates himself and hates everybody, but he's a really good fighter. And Brendan is like the integrated, family man who he's got a touch of the shadow, but he doesn't have he doesn't have like the no breaks situation that Tommy has. And the central question of his competition with his brother is like, does his sort of light side conquer the dark side? And when you make that kind of implausible, like you want the good guy to win, but you want it to be fair. You don't want the deck to be stacked.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you bring in, he's a no name. He's like 37. And then you ask the audience to believe that, like, in spite of the fact that he's been doing other things for the last 15 years of his life, he's got this like superior fundamentals. He's like the white quarterback, and they want to talk about how cerebral he is and how you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he resorts to technique and holds and endurance, like just taking hits.
Yeah, so like if you want to make it like a spiritual story about the light conquering the dark, his capacity to just absorb a beating, that's maybe more believable, because like Joel Edgerton already has like this, I don't want to curse, pre-busted Irish physiognomy. Like he kind of already looks like you've beat the crap out of him.
Yeah, Australian penal colony.
Right. And so he's great for this part where like his job is just to just be inflamed, just to be swollen and busted and split open.
Which is actually just as you articulate that, and sorry if I'm stealing a point you're about to make, but you look at the two brothers. One brother ran off with the mom, justifiably, understandably so, but Brendan stays behind. Well, he stays behind for the girlfriend, but it could also be seen that he was able to withstand the torment of his dad, because that's what he does. He takes things.
Right. And there's a version of that story which is Joel wins. But I think a more interesting take is that there has to be some integration. There has to be some. I don't know. I would have liked to see more of a synthesis. On the other hand, I mean, like I guess what I'm saying is Joel in this movie, he wins because of his like superior virtue and who he is. And I think he had less of an arc than I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I think, and that's, we mentioned Jack Reacher, and that's something that Jack Reacher has, a flat arc, and you do see that in usually in supporting characters in films like Obi-Wan, Gandalf, these mentor figures who what they believe and who they are at the beginning is the same person who they are at the end. And that's something that Jack Reacher has. That's something Paddington Bear has in his two films, which are phenomenal. kids movies. And I do agree it would be cool to have seen more of an arc, especially because we do get a hint of a lack of resolution with his own shadow. And we just see a hint of that in the interaction when he and his dad come face to face outside his house. But I like what you said. And it's really interesting because, Bennett, you talked about Tommy absorbing and really emulating a lot of the bad of his dad. He's not an alcoholic, but he's at the beginning, he's taking all those pain pills and he offers, alcohol to his dad. And he's tormented, he's angry, but he was the one who left. Whereas, Brendan stayed with the dad and didn't absorb that. And so I think that really shows. And Tommy's biggest thing is he runs away. He ran away from his dad. He runs away from the Marine Corps. And, and I like that submitting at the end. He doesn't get knocked out. He submits, and that was his choice. And then, I like how it ends, and you can only imagine he's going to face court-martial and everything. So he does have to submit to that. And I think that's cool, and I like the Christian undertones because it is a universal story and those truths are applicable in any sense. And it really made me think of the prodigal son, and here we have a prodigal dad, we have prodigal brothers, and they're all coming to a different place.
Which Nick Nolte was great as this like whining kind of self-pitying drunk. Like, he's not, he's literally whining is the way he talks in this movie. And, I thought that was such an interesting choice because like you are identifying with him in his desire to be forgiven. But the allusions to what he did, like you never get to see, what his crimes were, but the allusions to it are strong enough that you're like, oh, this guy hasn't paid up. This isn't done. This, and like when his kids are like, screw you, you're breaking the rules. You're not, I told you could call or you could write. I'm like on their, like, I know you're supposed to be, I feel like in this movie, you're supposed to be, rooting for their reconciliation, but pretty much throughout the movie, I'm kind of like, nah, he's kind of got to earn it. Like, he hasn't really earned it. And I did feel like, Tom Hardy goes from throwing quarters in his dad's face and telling him to F off, and then his dad falls off the wagon. And I guess I would have liked to have seen under the hood of that change of heart a little more, if that makes sense. Like to be honest with you, I watched that scene, and then in the next scene, Brendan's like, "Where's Dad? Where's Dad?" I was honestly thinking, like, wait, did Tom Hardy just kill his dad? Like, no. I kind of the emotional payoff of like the forgiveness felt like it came kind of out of nowhere, and Tom's expression in that scene is so blank that I'm like, oh, is he gonna like break his dad's neck? What is this? So that was a very confusing scene for me.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I want to hear from Grant here. I was just going to throw it, and I think the under the hood, like you're thinking, it's one line from Brendan, and it's when they're on the beach, which I think is probably my favorite scene. And at night, before he's in the casino and he, tells his dad to F off or whatever. And it's when Brendan says, "You are not the only one who has suffered." And right there, Brendan is being kind of selfish. He's talking about himself. But I think that Tommy then and he sees it. He sees his dad suffering. And I loved what they did with Herman Melville's Moby Dick. We get that, the audio book of that right at the beginning, and then before the training montage, and then Nick Nolte is quoting that after he's gone on this bender. And I think that was what Tommy realized, is that he doesn't have a monopoly on suffering.
I'm glad you brought up the Moby Dick. I was actually wondering if there was a significance to the passages that they choose to use as audio in the film.
So I haven't read it, but I mean, just thematically, it's very like, again, it's that shadow and that darkness, which is that Tommy's power. They allude to it in the film of him training as a kid, and they say like, oh, his dad has these controversial methods, but they succeed, they work.
Who's the I'm not a classics guy, but who's the Greek guy that they're referring to?
Theogenes. He was, and there's actually in Greek literature there's two people named Theogenes that are referred to in classical Greek literature, but this one in particular was a great fighter. He won 1,300 matches undefeated, and then the national Greek championship, you might call it, he won that several times in a row. And on the poster they have a picture of that famous statue, the boxer at rest. And so really cool figure. So it's, I don't want to get political or anything, but I mean, this is like
get political. This is a free space to do that.
Awesome. Well, I mean, this is the quintessential right-wing bodybuilder film. We've got classical literature, we've got, Greek aesthetics, we've got fighting, we've got family, we've got God, and so very, very cool undertones. And sorry, I interrupted you guys.
Well, I was just thinking about Moby Dick and the power of obsession, the power of monomania. And that's really the difference between Tommy and Brendan is Brendan is about some other things. And like, because they belabor that point every time he's in the ring. It's like, he doesn't care about the fans. He doesn't care about the rules. He's just here to fight. He's just a killing machine. And
he doesn't use intro music.
Right. He has no personality or persona. He's just there to fight. And so I think the references to Moby Dick are about that obsessiveness. They're about the and about compromising everything else to win.
Yeah, that's profound. Certainly the allusions between Patty, the dad, and Ahab are similar, because Ahab, obviously was through a traumatic thing, but all of these, every single one of them, at a point is Ahab, and they are all trying to kill this white whale, whatever it is, for them, and
for Nolte it's sobriety and reconciliation. For Tommy, it's I guess absolving guilt of being a deserter and then helping out his friend's wife. And then for Brendan, it's just saving his family.
And which is interesting, because like there's so much talk about family, and I think Patty and Tommy, are each other's white whales in a sense. But and not that the character of Brendan is perfect, but I think like that he is the most integrated, like Dr. Bennett said, and it's what he's fighting for. And it's interesting, that when he says on the beach, "I forgive you," and then Tommy's like, what do you have to forgive me for? And so it's like the forgiveness, and he even says that to his dad. He's like, "Oh yeah, I forgive Pop," but there's still no trust there. And it's not the forgiveness, but when Brendan says, "I'm sorry, Tommy, I love you," and it's those two things more than forgiveness that get through to him.
Yeah, that the scene on the beach, it actually reminds me of something, and I feel like I'm going to be stepping on some insightful stuff you had there, but because I'm going to go in a different direction. But that scene on the beach is very funny to me because Tommy, I don't know how to say this. Maybe it's not intentional, but it's hard for me to not come to this conclusion. Tommy seems like he has brain damage or something. Either from fighting, or maybe take from a roadside bomb or drugs. But on the beach, he's talking to him and he's like, you have nieces you've never met, Tommy. Like, I got daughter, like you could be part of our family, sort of thing. And Tommy's like, "I don't know them." Like, or that sort of, it's like, well, that's not a normal thing to say. I mean, he's obviously not normal, but it's like, yeah, you don't know him because you've not come to meet him, but they're your nieces, come to meet. And he's just like, and who are you exactly? And I know the point he's trying to make. The point is that the family has not been, fair to him, or that he's, they abandoned him in a sense. He feels like he abandoned, but he doesn't really say much in the movie that suggests he's working with very much upstairs.
No, I think that's a very good point. And what's interesting about that is like he's like disabled, but there's still so much pain there, and there's still so much rage and cruelty.
Well, you see that all the time. Like, that's like a really common thing in the world. Like, is that oftentimes the angriest people are, and it's, very unfair that this is the way it is, but oftentimes they're, like they might just literally be lacking the computational power to process the bad things that happen to them. Like, it's especially hard for them because it's kind of like if you're not working with a lot, you either are just going to simplify the bad things that happen to you and just sort of say, well, that was bad and I don't know what to do about it, I'm just going to live my life, or you and you move on, or you go the other direction and you just and you struggle to make any sense of it at all.
Yeah.
It's interesting too that because we do get a glimpse of, who Tommy could be when he calls Manny's wife and checks in on her and the kids. And that's who he's fighting for, is to raise some money for this widow, for this, Gold Star family that, and I think that it's interesting that Tommy ultimately gets caught. He gets found out because he saved those other guys' lives when he was going AWOL. And, they caught on film, and then they saw him fighting Mad Dog for $200. It's like, it's all these things that he's trying to do good. And I think that every single one of these three characters wants to do something good. And it's like, if Tommy could just realize that his brother is doing what Manny would have done if Manny were still alive, providing for his own two, because it's interesting that Manny also has two kids, and these kids don't have a father, but Tommy and Brendan have a father, and Brendan is a father to two kids. There's just some kind of layers there.
I wanted to I think we've done a pretty thorough analysis. I mean, there's other stuff we could get into, but just wanted to hear some of your favorite scenes, moments, lines, anything that you particularly liked. Um, for example, um, I love that first scene. So the movie is bookended with these two songs from the same band called The National. And the first scene, is the dad, Patty. He's in Pittsburgh. He's in his class. He's in his old car. He's got his tapes. It's just I mean, these scenes aren't hard to do. Like a lot of movies can do this and have these scenes, but it looks great, sounds great. They lean hard into like the blue collar Pittsburgh thing, but maybe they're pandering to me like when they do this, but I see that and I'm in like right then.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, I really liked the way it was filmed, and there were some interesting things too, like the color palette. We could talk about that too, but a lot of it they filmed kind of up close, and like the scene in the diner with Tommy and his dad. It's you just have the very top of the the vinyl bench, and it's just kind of blurry, and I liked how up close and personal, almost exaggerated the framing was.
Yeah, that scene I think is as well as so Nolte got nominated for Best Supporting for this, and I think it's that scene that does it. That plus the probably the hotel meltdown, but yeah, that diner scene in the hotel I think is where he earned that nomination.
Do you guys hate the wife?
Not so much. So I think we were talking about this in a chat online, and she didn't bug me so much because it's actually in sports movies it's pretty common to have this like role of wife who only ever expresses like anxiety. Like I don't remember the Rocky movies well enough, but it seems like at least in the first Rocky movie, like the wife never really, Adrian's never that supportive. I don't know. I don't want to speak ill of Rocky and Adrian, but she comes around, and I mean she's a little annoying, but seemed pretty like standard issue wife stuff. I don't know.
And again, maybe this was just me still being in my Christian movie frame, but I remember thinking like, oh, I'm glad that they allude to them having a healthy sex life. Like, I felt like that was because, and this is me Bennett posting, I suppose. But I think we have to fight the meme that like life ends when you get married and have kids. And like the fact that his wife's a babe and they still have sex, like that matters. And the fact that he's got like because it defines why part of why the choices that he makes are the right choices. Like it's not he's not incomplete because he's a teacher. He's not incomplete because he's a family man. Like
his motivation wasn't the ostensibly the motivation for him competing is to save the house. And they've had money troubles because of the daughter's medical issues. But I think an equal or bigger motivator was the fact that his wife had to wait tables in a miniskirt.
Yes. Yes.
That's why he needed $5 million.
Yes. Like, yeah. Okay. So now you're selling me on the whole, like this is an exit movie. Cause I'm all about getting the wife out of the workplace.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's a powerful motivator.
And that's something that we were talking about offline is that this whole film is a commercial for exit, and from multiple angles. Certainly Tommy getting out of the military because he's disenfranchised because his best friend was killed in friendly fire, and certainly now we're seeing a lot of stuff going on in the military that a lot of people are not okay with it, and they're either getting out or forced out because they don't want to get vaccinated. And then I love the bank scene, because we have this guy, just like normal banker, who's telling him all this stuff, and Brendan is like, I did that because you told me to do that. It's like, I didn't make you do that. I gave you that as an option, when he refinanced or whatever.
Yeah.
And, he's telling him all these forms, and he's like, oh, it's the county that did the appraisal, not the bank, but we got to go by the numbers. It's just like all that bull crap. And he's like, you're telling me I can't do anything? And they're like, oh, well, you can declare bankruptcy. It's a viable option these days. There's no shame in it. All this like, stupid stuff. And so I think, this is totally Exit. We're going to have to host an Exit MMA tournament.
That's a thought, man. That's an idea. I think there's definitely that element of, you're talking about the sort of Rust Belt working class vibe, and the way people just kind of get stomped on. Definitely, I mean, it's the same vibe as Hell or High Water. It's watching people get just victimized by these enormous faceless systems, and the way they try to get out. And I mean, yeah, that piece of it, the Brendan needing $5 million to save his house. I was confused by that, but then you reminded me of the miniskirt scene, and that totally snaps it right into place. He wants to be 100% all the way done with that.
Yeah, he's a good husband and a good dad. One thing we mentioned, the hotel scene when their dad, falls off the wagon and gets drunk. One of the cool things that, so he's obviously got his headphones on and he's listening to Moby Dick on tape, and he is sharing this and quoting this really powerful part, and he's drunk and he's yelling, and he's saying, stop the ship. And he's like, and this is a part in the book, where they're saying like that, they're telling Ahab to stop the ship. And then in the book, the quote is, that they're lost, the people who are going to die because of Ahab. But when the dad is quoting it to Tommy, he says, we're lost. And then he goes on and says, we're all lost, Tommy. And I think it's interesting, because both of them were in the Marine Corps, and they make it, and this isn't, to denigrate the Marine Corps by any means, but they make it clear that Brendan was not in the Marine Corps. And so I think that's kind of interesting, because they really play up, and Brendan certainly does. He feels like he was always second fiddle to Tommy, because Tommy was undefeated. He was the star wrestler, he was cool, and he was hoping that he'd get his dad all to himself. But, that didn't happen even when he stayed there. And certainly Patty and Tommy have a lot more in common.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about his kind of still like having like hunger for his dad's approval, and so like he stays there even though, and like he's got so much contempt for his dad too, but he's still hungry for his approval, and that drives, like he clearly frames in his mind like I have to stay close because I have these obligations, but there's like a lie behind that I don't know, man. There's a lot of things in this movie that you have to kind of find for yourself. And I wonder if, like, does that make it ineffective storytelling, or is it kind of good that they're like buried little nuggets? I don't know.
Well, regarding Tommy's, like, people do this all the time. Like the people that they're the most hostile to, they'll also hang around them, and because it's maybe the source of that hostility is not, feeling the love or approval or something. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think so. When Tommy like comes back into his dad's life, he's not going by the name Conlon anymore. He's going by Reardon, but we kind of later learn, if I remember correctly, when he deserted from the Marines, part of the reason they hadn't found him yet is because he actually never did change his name. He was still Conlon, and so so that it's maybe kind of an act. He's going to his dad and he's like, "Yeah, I changed my name. I hate you," and all this stuff. But he's really just saying that's a lie. He actually never changed his name. He still wants to be like his dad. He followed him into the Marines, and he still wants to do like the sport that his dad insisted he do. And then he shows up back at his dad's house and wants to work with him. I mean, he's difficult every step of the way, but this happens all the time. Like he's
shit testing him.
Yeah, and the people you allegedly hate are you just hate them because you want the more acceptance or something.
Yeah, I think that's true. And it's interesting how, like, well, because Patty wants to give that to him, right? He's ready to be the penitent recovering alcoholic. He wants to talk about his AA. He wants us to talk about his tokens. And he's clearly hungry to reconcile with everybody. And so the fact that they won't let him, but they clearly do want that is very interesting. Like they're trying to make him earn it, and they're trying to like make him crawl through broken glass to be with them. And and what's interesting about that too is that so I didn't expect the movie to end when it did. I thought there would be some denouement where, we that involved the dad, but no, it's just them two. And like I don't think that's, the more I think about it, I was originally like, oh, they left all these story threads like loose and they didn't tie them off, and that's not great. But honestly, like, the fact that it ends with the dad having just catastrophically fallen off the wagon after like a year of sobriety.
Yeah, over 1,000 days.
So almost 3 years of sobriety, and the fact that his arc with Brendan is never tied off, and the fact that there's this sort of reconciliation between Tommy and Patty, but like I like the messiness of it. I think the messiness of it is true to life.
So Tommy is there when his dad is in the middle of his relapse, and Tommy, it looks like he cleans him up and comforts him or something. But I have that kind of signaled a bit of reconciliation between Tommy and his dad. And it's maybe perverse a little bit, because I wonder if it's kind of like Tommy, because Tommy sent him there. And I wonder if Tommy's sort of willing to then engage in a little reconciliation because he sees how bad he hurt his dad. And he's like, well, if I'm able to hurt him that badly, like that's like a form of acceptance. Like, because if he didn't love me, if he didn't care what I said to him or said about him, why would he be distraught?
Yeah. It would not have been enough if he had just caught his dad like crying or sad. Like his dad had to despair and throw away everything he had done. And yeah, I don't know
Well, it's
that's
a little
real
it's
to me too.
perverse. It's a
Yeah.
little perverse too, but that's how people are. Like
It's definitely perverse.
people say mean things to each other, and they do it because they want to see if it hurts the other person, that means it had power. That means that the person cares what they say.
Yeah, no one can hurt you like family. And it's ironic too, because I mean, Tommy's, downward spiral starts because of an instance of friendly fire that killed his best friend. And he proceeds to continue to fire at friendlies throughout the movie at his father and his brother.
Yeah. And I don't know if how conscious this was, but this movie comes out 2011, and the lead time for I think if I understood correct, Gavin O'Connor, the director, the writer and director, I think he'd been working on this for like 5+ years. So that puts you back at the time of Pat Tillman. We have professional athletes, friendly fire, disillusionment with the military.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Great point.
Because it's not like well, what's weird about it is it's not like they got shot at. They got bombed, right? They got bombs dropped on them. It was like a bad airstrike, and Pat Tillman's story is pretty iffy and pretty wild. That's a whole rabbit hole that we can't get into here. But
yeah, but that reference, I just mean that the story is written in the shadow of that event.
Yes.
At least the public understanding of that event.
Absolutely.
I loved the whole fighting aspect. And here's another plug for Exit. You have to be willing to put yourself out there. Tommy, he's like, I'll fight him. He just sees this guy knock out another sparring partner, and he's like, yeah, I'll fight him. And then he gets on the radar. And then Brendan, goes to his buddy. He's networking. He's like, hey, can I just like train here? And he's like, yeah, well, I'm putting all my eggs in this basket. This guy is going to go to the tournament. And I always liked it because the promotion that I fought under was called Spartica, and the tournament in the film is Sparta. So I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, go. No, go ahead.
Oh, just as a kind of a factoid, the rich guy sponsoring Sparta, that's the director. That's Gavin O'Connor.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool to, I like it when filmmakers, have cameos like that and put themselves in their work. I think it's nice for the audience to see the person who's, behind the scenes. And what I was going to say is, kind of against Tommy, another thing you want to make sure you're doing is you don't want to be the best person in your gym. If you're the strongest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, because you do need people that are better than you to push you. And we see that with Brendan. He's training with, top level athletes, and eventually he gets to the point where he's able to tap, this star, and outrun him up the hill. And then of course the guy who's supposed to go to the tournament gets injured, and he takes his place.
They belabor this point that like anybody can win, because anybody can make a mistake. And but that's I don't know, man. Like that, yeah. Again, it comes back to like the plausibility of the Rocky story in this context, where he's kind of washed up and he does the whole comeback thing. Again, like why would he be the more like technical when technique is so much a matter of practice and like getting it dialed in? Like, I don't know. Well, and maybe this is, getting into weird territory, but like, the whole essence of what is natural ability, what is innate to you, and what is like the moral dimension of sport, which is like, he fought the hardest, and he deserves it on some moral level, instead of just like, he was the strongest and the fastest and the luckiest. Because that's clearly what they're trying to do with him, is they're trying to his purpose as that character is to be like, he wins because he's morally deserving, rather than being the most innately gifted and the youngest and the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, I don't have an opinion about that, but it's a weird dimension to think about.
Yeah. Derailing a bit here. But one thing, we'll wrap it up in a minute here, but possibly the craziest part about this movie to me, and this is 11 years ago. Why does the school care so much that Brendan has a side job? Because it seems like nowadays teachers can do whatever they want. Like teachers can go online and like say that they hate their students, and no one cares. But this guy,
I think that's a relatively new, like, norm change.
yeah.
I don't know. I think it used to be, well, and I mean, I think also it's hard to really remember. Like, I can remember MMA being kind of disreputable.
Yeah.
Yes,
And,
yeah. I mean, John McCain called it human cockfighting, and they actually use that term. The principal does. And before I got married, I was working for a different school district, and I was fighting a lot, and I'd come in, and I'd be kind of beaten up, and they took exception to that, and there are other problems with that particular school district, but yeah, like the principal would be like, you can't be coming in here looking all beat up and stuff.
It sounds, well, maybe it's still around, but it sounds, because now there's like teachers with OnlyFans accounts, and teachers unions are pretty strong.
Yeah, and like my example, that was like 2014, or 2013, so.
but I mean,
quite some time ago.
Well, and I think there's also an element of this, which is OnlyFans, and like having a rainbow mohawk and lipstick and nail polish on a dude is weird and repulsive, and being in MMA is virile and requires competence and skill and discipline. And I think it's pretty obvious which of those they find the most distasteful.
Yeah. And it's not like this, I'm sure, was not in the minds of the filmmakers, but MMA is coded at least a little bit like red state, like Dana White is.
Yeah.
He's certainly not like part of the blue apparatus.
Yeah, very true.
And I mean, it is, it's kind of a rebuke. Like so you say that wasn't on their minds. I think they did very much make the principal like a balding fat guy on purpose, and kind of cowardly. Like it's not that he has any problem with what Brendan's doing. He's just got a boss, and he's just sort of rolling over for that system and not backing his guy. And well, and then he backs him from the TV, but how much does that count for? Like that whole subplot with the school and the students was confusing to me, because it was like, I guess I guess it's intended to establish like that he's a beloved teacher and that his role in the community is positive.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed a little belabored. It kind of seemed like we're gonna inject. It's sort of like a change of pace, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
we just need a scene change here. What if we cut to the students and they have this little subplot where they need to borrow the auditorium, and the man won't let them borrow the auditorium, but then he does, and you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that seems kind of meandering.
I think the movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes. So I'm a little surprised they didn't cut. Yeah, 2 hours 20. Yeah, they could have saved about 10 on school related stuff.
I mean, at least, yeah.
And it would have been the right decision, probably.
And I kind of like that. And they did a really good job of making it kind of explaining things to normies or people who don't know MMA, like the kids, like they're talking about what's MMA. Oh, like different styles, like they're talking about, and then they get the commentators who are explaining an omoplata, or
Oh yeah,
a rear naked choke or whatever. So I thought that was good. And with some of the guys from Exit, we've been doing some nostalgia fiction, and this movie is nostalgic, because I think back to when I was, fighting a lot, or when I was in high school, so like, I think there's some cool things like that. And it different. I think the school part helped break up like the very, very heavy family drama that was like more painful than the actual fights in a lot of instances. I thought it was interesting too that the principal says that the superintendent who's coming hasn't set foot in a school since 9/11. It's almost like the left is saying like, oh, they call it a January 6th moment now. So I just a teacher is earning more money outside of school doing something cool. January 6th moment. This is worse than 9/11.
Yeah, Super Nintendo Chalmers. You mentioned the ringside commentary. That's probably. I'm thinking. I mean, I guess Frank Grillo is probably the third or fourth, the kind of the fourth banana, like best role. But then fifth banana is Brian Callen doing the ringside. His commentary. I mean, it's a lot of, what's that?
That's a lot of bananas.
Yeah, but yeah, Callen's commentary. I mean, I guess a lot of people could have done that role. I bet they asked Rogan to do it, but he doesn't like acting. But
he was in Here Comes the Boom, though.
Oh, really? Yeah. I actually heard. I think Rogan didn't like this movie, even though Callen's his buddy.
Why didn't he like it?
I think he got hung up on the quality of the fighting and like the some of the issues the technical stuff we talked about earlier, because it's a dumb reason to not like it, but
it's okay. But fair play to Rogan. Like I can see where he's coming from with the best story earns the ending.
Yeah, he. I mean, I think if this happens when it's something you're too close to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you just can't. You have this visceral reaction. You have to like if you're watching the thing really well. If you're watching someone do it incorrectly, it's like painful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you just can't. You can't buy the payoff.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you guys want a more lighthearted MMA movie, Here Comes the Boom with Kevin James is fantastic as well.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that. I know what it is, but I've not seen it.
Good flick. Yeah, I think Brian did a good job too. I thought that back and forth was good. It was interesting to see. Some of them taking Tommy's side, some of them taking Brendan's side. Like I thought that was pretty good. Yeah, it was a good movie. I liked the fights. I definitely liked the submissions. I thought the jujitsu was good.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on the last thing. I usually do this last, the soundtrack. And so the soundtrack, it's kind of funny because to me, so Frank Grillo does the thing with the classical music, like he makes his guys train to classical, and that's like their entrance music. But otherwise, so the movie has that song from the National at the beginning, which is a really good song, and then that end scene, the song is like very much a character in that scene. It's an incredibly important part of the scene, which to me is seriously, it's like without that song, it's still a good scene. It's still the right ending to the movie, but it loses like 30% because that song is just like perfect. The Gavin O'Connor, I guess, the guys who wrote the movie, as I understand it, spent like a full day or more with that song on repeat, writing that end sequence of the movie, which is what I did for preparation for this conversation. I just listened to it for 2 days straight or something. But I'm wondering if you guys noticed any other like music. I mean, I think that first and last song really make the movie better, but I don't remember much in between.
Yeah, that's a good point. I totally agree. I like the classical stuff too. My boxing coach had us do that when I was a kid, but yeah, I think that the beginning song and the ending song, I can't think of anything else as far as soundtracks or music.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I watched it while I was working out, so I I didn't catch the music.
Yeah, but you're totally right about that ending song. It was just super powerful.
Yeah, go on YouTube and you can just load up the last scene with the song. It's I saw this movie probably 10 years ago, and a couple times a year I'll just watch the end scene, just as like a music video.
Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome. It's really powerful. And if you guys have never done jujitsu, you absolutely have to, because understanding what it's like to be tapped out and then tapping out yourself, like that's powerful.
All right, anything else?
When are we gonna fight, Brett?
Dude, next time we see each other, we're absent, and you're in killer shape, so you're definitely gonna clean my clock. But yeah, for sure. And anytime, I love to fight. And it's funny, I'll have to send you guys some of my links in YouTube. You can see some of my fights. But like, I love to fight, but my dad always told me, like, and I've trained with UFC fighters, and I love to fight, but I'm not like super good, for one, and two, I don't like hurting people. Like, I really don't like hitting people even, but it's just fun. It's super fun to get in the cage, and your world just shrinks down to that space, and all you see is the person in front of you. And yeah, so I really like that. I liked how the last fight, the film is in the cage, because for most of the fight scenes, the camera is out of the cage and you see them through the chain link. But for the last scene, it's right up with them.
Yeah, I guess that reminds me, the last thing, one thing I wanted to touch on was, we kind of touched on it, but just the fact that sometimes people who are kind of out of control, like Tommy, they literally have to just be beaten. Yeah, like sometimes for people's own good, they have to be dominated physically before they can be before you can address them, intellectually or emotionally. I mean, you see it mostly with kids. You don't beat them, but sometimes you have to embrace them and stop them from flailing about, hurting themselves, hurting others before they can be reasoned with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that's one of the things that I've gotten pretty good at with my boys is this is a little value for your listening pleasure here. I light a lighter and I get my kids to blow it out, and because they like fire, and like I think there's something in the human brain that just you have to zero in when you see fire, and it's a game. They have to like try to blow it out, and you can kind of move it and not let them blow it out. But it also forces them to breathe. They have to fill their lungs to then blow out the candle or the lighter. And it's pretty much instantaneous. So if you want to be the cool uncle at a party, kids having a temper tantrum, and you got a lighter on you, that's a fun one to deploy because it's like a magic trick.
That's a great tip. I love that.
Yeah, I think I saw you mention that a while ago. I tried it, but I think the kid I tried it on was too young. But I can probably try it again pretty soon.
Yeah, take a whack at it. I mean, it's 10 for 10 for me. But yeah, okay. So fair enough. Your mileage may vary. But yeah, you definitely. I mean, like you have to get them out of the crisis state. You have to arrest that process. And
well, it's like a lot. Yeah.
I mean, another thing that's important about that with kids and with people who are in that state is that it's not an enjoyable place to be. They want to be rescued from that state. They want to be pulled out of it. And so if you can interrupt that, they will appreciate it.
And that's the great thing about jiu-jitsu is because you can submit someone without hurting them.
Yeah.
Not that you should be choking out your kids or whatever, but I mean, even in real life scenarios, you can do jiu-jitsu. So that's everyone's homework. Everyone listening, just find a jiu-jitsu gym, and they'll give you a free lesson or a free week or whatever.
All right, cool. And we'll wrap it up there. And Brett, don't forget to. I think you said you were going to send some shirtless photos.
That's right. Yeah, coming right up.
So in the chats, we are doing Physique Friday, man. So we need to see some physiques.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I'll send you guys links to my fight so you can see some me getting beat up.
Love it.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys.
Hey, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks.
All right, later.
Bye.